So Berto just saw a movie called Don't Look Up on Netflix and thought of you, texted you. Mm-hmm. You said you saw it, and I said, let's record an episode and talk about it. What do you say?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I pin pins on people.
So I heard about this movie because there were lots of people talking about it, and called Don't Look Up, and it was supposedly a metaphor for climate change. And I heard the reviews, and I thought, based on what people were saying, I thought it sounded too broad, too goofy, and it was like a missed opportunity, an opportunity to really make our generation's Dr. Strangelove and Adam McKay just went too far with his like bro comedy. That's basically what I was gathering. And then one night, people kept talking about it. It's like one night, me and Stacy were like, well, let's just watch it and see. I had pretty low expectations. And there were some over-the-top moments, which we'll get into in today's episode. But overall, it resonated with me tremendously. I mean, as I was watching this thing, and as we build up to the first ending, the second ending was stupid, which we'll also get into. But the first ending, it was deeply, deeply affecting to me. I mean, for those who listen to this podcast, you know that I am I don't know what to call it. I don't know what sort of I have a stick up my butt about climate change or something, and this movie really touched on that stick. Also, I thought the movie was enjoyable, really funny. It moves really quick. I mean, Adam McKay is really good at keeping the story moving, keeping the visuals interesting, sprinkling comedy here and there. Really made something that I thought was just entertaining, even if you didn't think about its implications to our society. I really liked it. But I was thinking, if I saw this movie 5 years ago, I would have thought, this is too over the top. This is silly. Like when I saw Idiocracy, I'm like, yeah, no, right. But now in 2022, Berto, when I watch this, because if you haven't seen this movie, and it's not a spoiler alert, the Don't Look Up title refers to a point in the story because a comet is coming to blow up the Earth, and we have scientists saying, look up, there's a comet that is going to kill us. We have to do something about it. And there's this political movement of, I don't know what you call them, like conservatives or something, anti-science conservatives, would be safe to say, are saying their catchphrase is "Don't look up," which is kind of like a MAGA phrase or something. It's like, "Don't look up, don't look up," and they're proud of it.
Yeah,
meaning, don't give in to the libs by looking up to the sky, because they want you to be afraid. They want you to they want to control you, and everything's going to be fine. Everything's under control. So don't look up. Don't look up. When, it's a pretty, I don't know, goofy, if you just wrote it on a piece of paper, part of the movie and the script. But when I saw it, I'm like, yeah, this could happen. This is happening. Right now, I just said it, but 25% of Americans believe that powerful people intentionally planned the virus, Berto. 25% of Americans. 25%, 1 in 4.
Don't get the shot. Don't get the shot.
If 4 Americans, on average, one of them, and probably if you're in a scientifically minded circle, it's probably none of them, but if 4 Americans at work, for example, the chances are one of them believes that powerful people intentionally planned the virus.
Yep.
So, because back in the day, and I've talked about this before, when the pandemic first started, when the coronavirus first hit the shores of the United States, I said, well, this is going to be great because we don't have a politic around vaccines, really. If anything, it's a left thing to be anti-vax.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be great. The conservatives are always like talking about the authority, always saying, hey, bow down to authority. You know, authorities know what they're doing. And so the authority definitely in the medical community is get the vaccine and wear a mask. And so I thought, man, conservatives are going to be all over this stuff.
But they're anti-science. We forgot they're anti-science.
Well, yeah, for sure. I just didn't realize it translated to medicine. You know, I knew they were anti-science when it came to global warming, for example, and oil and cigarettes and, you know, whatever.
And evolution and
yeah, evolution. But for some reason, I thought, you know, I just thought it'll work out. And so if I saw this movie even 2 years ago, I would have said, oh, come on. I mean, this is a little over the top. This is like Idiocracy. Watching this movie now, Don't Look Up, the whole time I'm like, yeah. I mean, it was both kind of satisfying to laugh at them and to see it in all of its ridiculousness, but it was also demoralizing and terrifying to me. Berto, how did you feel about watching this movie?
Yeah, same. I mean, so I had a similar situation where everyone was raging about it online, like, oh, don't look up, don't look up, don't look up. We gotta watch it, gotta watch it, gotta watch it. But I fully 100% assumed it was a disaster movie, like Armageddon, all these movies. And you know, it had been a while, I guess, since I watched Armageddon movie.
It is a disaster movie.
I mean, it is, but you know what I mean. Like that, the whole thing is going to be like, there's an asteroid coming. Okay, we got to rally, we got to do it, and then of course they win in the end. That's a disaster movie.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, okay, well, it's been a while, but I don't really need to watch a disaster movie. But it kept like, and I'm like, Leonardo's in it? Like, really? Leo's in a disaster movie? So, you know, I gave in. I'm like, okay, gotta watch it. And absolutely loved it and absolutely was terrified. And I remember like cringing, sitting there in some of the scenes going like, this is some of the best satire I've ever seen. And I am in such pain watching it. Now, it is funny. You say that, you know, if we had seen this some years ago, certainly 5 years ago, but maybe even 2 years ago, I agree. At the same time, I think it's because we've been blind. Do we remember Burn, Baby, Burn?
Yeah.
Burn, baby, burn. That, I mean, these little catchphrases aren't new and they are very self-destructive. The thing is that, yeah, now it's like to such an extreme that movies like Idiocracy and this, which is on the surface so over the top, right? Like no one would imagine that, you know, you have a panel of scientists coming to meet with the people in charge and they're not prioritized. And then once they're finally kind of get in, they're sort of ridiculed because they're like crass and not from the right, or not even crass. They're not from the right schools and blah, blah, blah. And then when they're believed because they think they can, you know, use them to their political advantage. And then when it's not politically expedient anymore, they're like, yeah, don't look up. And yet you're 100% right. That is exactly what we've been going through.
Yeah. Side note.
So yeah, it was painful.
I've seen an actual good disaster movie, Greenland, with Gerard Butler.
No.
Came out
recent?
It came out last year. Yeah, it's pretty good,
really?
Actually.
And it's all global warming, climate change?
No, it's just about a comet that's going to hit the Earth. And
okay. Why is it called Greenland? Oh, is that where everyone goes to survive or something?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. Spoiler alert.
Well, whether they get there or not is the movie. So just to give you some more stats, Berto, about this question, they polled people. Do you believe that powerful people intentionally planned the virus? Do you believe? Now, by the way, I'm not a biologist, but I listen to podcasts of experts along these lines. And there have been investigations into whether any of the conspiracy theories make sense. You know, instead of just saying no to the conspiracy theories, so, well, let's look into it.
Yeah.
You know, if there were evidence that pointed in this direction, what would it look like? And, you know, they've done all those things and there's been no evidence. Plus, it's completely reasonable that a coronavirus, which has been among us, you know, the common cold, if you didn't know, is the coronavirus. It's just that this is a particular version of the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, that just kills a lot of people in a similar way that this, the quote unquote Spanish flu was just a version of the influenza virus that killed a lot of people. So it's completely reasonable, given our society today, given how fast things move around, that eventually there's going to, have a virus that will do this. So, and on that note, like when Omicron, right now we're the ravages of Omicron, right? It really points out how, even though, there are oceans and you got to get in planes to travel places, we are all connected biologically as human beings. Like, wasn't Omicron, didn't it show up in like South Africa or where?
Yep,
where did it,
South Africa.
And within like 3 weeks, it had made its way, all the way to Seattle and had replaced Delta or something. It was a very short amount of time.
It was very fast.
So it just shows like, and to be specific, that means that someone breathed in someone else's face, or, someone breathed in someone else's air, someone else's biology. Yeah. And then breathed out, and then another person breathed in someone else's biology, biological material. Anyway, so. Which
means we're sort of all making out with each other all the time, constantly.
Yeah, right. I'm glad that you put it to that level, because I've been waiting for some kind of poignant, ridiculous Berto way of saying it, and that's how you say it. Essentially, we are all making out with each other. It just takes us a month to get around, Yeah. We are in this constant mouth orgy, because that's what it is. It's all through our mouths. It's all like saliva and mucus and stuff.
Now it's getting a little hot in my recording booth.
So, Berto, when they ask people and they get their demographics, do you believe that people intentionally planned the virus? Let's do some breakdowns by education. Percentage of people, so remember 25% of Americans. High school or less education, what percentage, Berto?
High school or less, I'm going to go 40%.
48, almost 50%. Half. Okay. Half of people with high school or less education believes that powerful people intentionally, because now, if you just believed that, like, Jesus died for your sins or something, that's one thing. But if you believe this, one, you're a product of your stupid echo chamber and you're gullible. But two, your actions will be affected, right? Like your voting actions, I don't know, like it'll motivate the crowd to do things that will actually bring us all down.
Absolutely.
Post-grad. Percentage of people with post-grad degrees who believe that powerful people intentionally planned
10%.
Close, 15. It's still depressing.
It's a lot of people, dude.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people. Because see, the thing is, like, when you are young and uneducated, or you are, in the working force, but you don't have a lot of economic means. It makes sense that, look, you're not in control of a lot of your life. So it's not that big of a stretch that those in control, the powers that be, did some more crazy stuff that's going to put you still out of control. It doesn't seem that crazy. And then you throw in a little bit of religious belief, and a lot of people believe that it's close to end times anyways, and so this seems to track.
But wouldn't that be against that? Because, like, doesn't God cause locusts to fly across the
but God works in mysterious ways through humans too, because anyways, but then if you get far enough into the educational funnel, then you think, so then you should start asking the question, okay, let's say that the hypothesis is that this was a planned event by a shadowy set of individuals that are powerful. So my question is, like, okay, to what end? And this is where it always gets even more ridiculous, because it's like, well, because they want to control us. Okay, to what end? Well, because they want all the power. But I thought you said they're super powerful. Yeah, they want more power. Okay, what are they going to do with the more power?
Yeah,
to
do you think Bill Gates is looking for more money?
Yeah. But so you kind of have to take it to a supernatural
Not that
level.
He's not looking for more money. I'm just saying, like, what's the story? And just side note, I feel like this is where the MCU is a bad thing because
Yeah.
these kinds of movies always have these kinds of plots.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. You have to take it to a supernatural level at some point because the material plane just doesn't seem like reason enough. So you have to say, well,
It's
either,
Thanos.
It's Thanos, or like it's really, like I said, end times, or they're trying to be satanic, or they're trying to, it's got to be something.
Right.
Because if you're just like, well, they want more Lamborghinis. Like, well, Lamborghinis have to get produced by people in factories. How would shutting everything down get them more Lamborghinis?
Right.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. They want to just like be more powerful. Okay, well, how are you powerful if you can't travel around the world freely, if you can't go to like restaurants that you love, if you can't, what are they trying to do? What is their goal here?
Right.
Do they not love going to Vegas themselves?
Yeah.
It just doesn't compute.
And we have a tendency to transfer our childhood experiences onto politics. And if you had parents who didn't treat you well, you couldn't trust them, then that all gets transferred onto Bill Gates. Percentage of...
Sorry, and there's actually conspiracies happening as we speak that are real, which are much more mundane, but real, which are, hey, a group of individuals who are in power say, you know what, we can spin this bit of news or this bit of information and convince us, a good portion of our voters, that this is why it's happening, and then they'll vote for us. And those are conspiracies.
Right.
But those are mundane. It's nothing supernatural about it.
Yeah. Percentage of people who identify as conservative who believe that powerful people intentionally planned the virus.
Oh, man. Conservatives, I'm going to go 50%.
No, it's much lower than that.
It's still averaged out. Yeah, okay, 30%.
Yeah, something like 30. Democrat.
Oh, man, 20%.
Very close, 18. And somehow they broke out liberal.
Liberal. Separate than Democrat?
Yeah. Which I think is supposed to be more Democrat.
Progressive or something?
Yeah.
15%.
10%.
10%, okay.
Still bad, but 10%. Women as opposed to men. All these surveys, it's always a binary.
Women, I'm going to go 30%.
Oh, very close, 29. Men.
Ooh, it's an interesting one. I'm going to go 32%.
21.
Oh, it's a lot lower. Okay.
So
21. Still though, 1 in 5 men.
Yeah, but this was weird to me because that doesn't scan for me. Why would, because that's a lot. It's like 50% more women
Yeah.
Than men. So why would that be, do you think?
What are the percentages when it comes to education? Are there significantly more males that get higher education?
I don't know. I don't know if the little I know about those correlations is that's probably not the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I'm not
weird.
Sure. Do women tend to spend more time on social media? I don't know.
In certain pockets, for sure. Is it holdover from anti-vax stuff? Because that's anecdotally was a lot of women in my history because they're often
protecting the babies. But see,
right.
I don't know. I was very concerned about vaccines 11 years ago because I had heard through the internets that, vaccines could cause autism. And until I did my own research for reals, I was concerned about it.
Well, did you ever think about asking your physician?
Well, yeah, but in my experience,
did you ask the expert?
But physicians never quote you stats though. Like that's the one problem with a lot of doctors in general is they learned what they learned in school and then they read the journals, right? But they don't sit there and break out the graphs and the stats.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that
looked
into.
Rarely they do, yeah.
Yeah, so if I had asked the physician would have said, like, of course you got to get the vaccines. Because, these are time-tested, proven, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, that's a great point, and it is a great point. But what I, at the time, wanted to look at is, is there data? And there was plenty of data. It was easy to disprove the hypothesis.
Yeah.
But why was I susceptible? Because I was about to have a kid, and I was like, what if I give my kid the wrong thing and they die or they develop weird symptoms?
Yeah.
So,
Young people, 18 to 29 percentage.
I'm going to go 25.
Close, 26.
Very close. You should be
Mid-range
like,
people.
wow, you nailed it. Mid-range people.
30 to 64.
Oh, wow. 22%.
27.
Oh, higher. It's
65
higher.
Yeah. Well, slightly. I mean, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
significant, but
Okay.
65 plus.
30.
20.
Oh, so I'm off here.
Yeah.
I would have assumed
Yeah.
that the older generations that are like on social media without the additional context are sitting there going like, I believe everything.
Yeah.
But maybe this is incorrect. So
Yeah. I mean, it goes totally against stereotype because
Yeah.
the stereotype is that old people are stupid. You know, that's the stereotype, or they're
Right.
they're like gullible
but
but
it's the middle-aged people that are falling the most.
well,
Not even middle-aged. I just mean in the middle group.
I mean 26, 27%, that's not that much of a difference. So I would say everyone below 65.
Everyone below 60. And then granted, the 65-year-olds and up, they're still what, 20?
20, yeah.
That's still 1 in 5.
And this is a stat from our episode on QAnon, Berto. People who believe, total Americans who believe a surveillance microchip is being planted in the COVID-19 vaccines percentage. And this stat was taken from like, I don't know, a year ago, so it's probably different now, but
That's got to be like, it can't be higher than 12%.
yeah, it's 9%. And
Okay.
among QAnon believers, what percentage?
50%.
39. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just now, on one hand, we're like, oh, like you said, only 20% of people 60. That's 1 in 5 people and it's not believing something like the coronavirus will be over soon or masks aren't that effective or something, you know, not something that you could kind of understand where someone's coming from. It is believing that powerful people intentionally planned and committed the virus to our population.
Like it would have certainly scanned better if, for example, the thing starts. A country mysteriously seems very unaffected or very little effect from the thing. Everyone else is kind of getting decimated, and that country starts benefiting economically in gigantic ways. Then I might start being like, that's kind of curious.
Yeah.
Or not even a country, right? Like you could say, well, how come certain individuals seem
Well, that's what they would say about
protected
Pfizer and Moderna. That's what they would say.
I guess so, yeah. And then the other thing is like, okay, so the chips. So what's it, like 3 billion vaccines now. So there's 3 billion people being tracked, not through their cell phones anymore. Now they're being tracked through nanochips.
Yeah.
So I would expect that means they know everyone's age and location, DNA, all that stuff. So we should have seen a disappearance like of million plus kids or something for the Q believers
Yeah.
Like, so where is the effect of this? Like 3 billion people being tracked as we speak.
Yeah.
What's happening to these 3 billion people?
So in Don't Look Up, when I see a huge group of people politically are at rallies with the president saying, don't look, and the president saying, don't look up, and then everyone just repeats that, I say to myself a few years ago, that's ridiculous. And now I say, that's right down the middle. That's mainstream understanding of how our society works right now.
It's gotten so backwards that now you have, you could certainly make a case that the president in the movie is at the very least an amalgamation of the last two candidates, or, Trump and Hillary. But certainly you could see that, her kids in power, the people are wearing red hats. So you could see it's like, okay, it skews probably on the Trump direction. But ironically, right now, Trump is sitting there going like, no, the vaccine works. You should get the vaccine. And a lot of his supporters and or other allies are like, no, what? No, don't listen to that. it's the world is so upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I heard about this movie being too broad or too silly or too over the top, although we'll get into some like minor moments where I agree completely, actually, the overall premise is right down the middle how our society works today. I mean, it's I could absolutely see something like this happening. And and it's essentially happening right now with climate change.
Yeah.
And has been happening since I've been aware of climate change in the 70s. Like, it's not something that just happened. It's not like a comet just showed up. I mean, we have been living this reality for so long. And when I watched this movie, it just felt very resonant. That's the word. I was like,
Totally.
I'm watching this. I'm like, and Jennifer Lawrence's character particularly, I just felt so attuned with her. I mean, everything she was doing, I'm like, thank you. Someone is yelling, someone's screaming, someone's upset, someone is dealing with the reality of this. Someone's reacting immediately to the ridiculousness of our society, and I just felt very satisfied, you know. And the whole story arc of Jennifer Lawrence's character, every moment I was just like, yep, that's what I'd do. Yep, that's what I would do.
Yeah. I also really enjoy Leo's too, because first of all, they made it a kind of a rich character, you know. He's got his infidelity, he's kind of like family man, but he happens to be a good looking professor, and then he gets notoriety from that, but he kind of like doesn't know how to even leverage that. But then he does have his breakdown moment where he also rages.
Right.
And it's reminiscent of that, was it the Network movie? Yeah. And it's just so good, because I was like worried for his health in that scene. I'm like, because I've seen him be so intense in The Revenant and so many movies.
Yeah.
But that one, I'm
you think
like,
he's going to blow a gasket?
Man, you really got to pull back a little bit. But it was so therapeutic in a way. Like, yes. That's it. And he's looking at the camera, and it's like, you mother, like, yes. And, you know, I was talking about this 2 days ago with some people. Imagine an alien civ comes down right now, and they're like, hey, what's up, Earthlings? Hey, you know, you don't know us. We were here like 1 million years ago. We're just checking back in. How are things going? What's been going on? And then, you know, we notice you guys are like on the verge of collapse ecologically. And, you know, this happens, but just wanted to chat about it. What are you guys all doing about it? And then, you know, some human stands up. Oh, well, yeah, that's true, but you should check out our latest thing. Have you heard of crypto? What? Yeah, no, it's this crazy thing. So we got all these server farms just burning through energy. Whoa, are they trying to like compute how to solve global warming? What? No, they're just creating money. Oh, wait, what? You're burning through like more energy than many countries to create money?
Yeah, it doesn't get any more pointed than that.
And what are you going to do with the money?
Literally destroying the planet. Now, you know, the amount of global warming and climate change that's occurring from crypto farming, I don't know. I can't imagine.
It's high, dude. The energy utilization. Think about this. Why is there a global shortage of video cards? Because they're in rack after rack after rack. And then the question is, what are we going to do with all this money? And the answer is, we're going to buy more video cards and more racks to burn through more resources.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do as ignorant animals.
Yeah.
And the aliens are going to get in their ship and say, well, we tried. Let's just step away.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not defending crypto. I'm just saying that, like, the atrocities that have been happening for decades now, the airline industry, cars,
but see,
coal
you
burning.
could absolutely right. But you could understand how we came from, like, well, we have horses, now we have cars. Why not use the cars? What, you mean you can fly? Well, we should definitely be flying.
Right.
It would have been really hard to expect that humans would have not done this. But now, with all the information we have about what's happening and everything, to know that now one of our biggest energy sinks is in simply creating money, like virtual money. That is just so emblematic and sad.
I know.
It's so sad.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, in the beginning, it felt such a good system. You know, when I first heard about crypto, I was like, oh, that's a good system. Like, in order to, you know, make more money, you have to dedicate your computer to just crunching away at numbers. Like, that's kind of interesting. But it never occurred to me, do you know this is going to lead to just like entire buildings filled with computers that are just like, that's all that they're doing. And
burning through
it's
power.
just wasting resources and causing climate change because that's the way the system works, you know.
Now, if what you want to tell me is that what we're doing is we're only using solar power and nuclear power and wind or whatever, and we're using this to replace all paper that we create normal money with, and we are saving, you know, fine, let's have that conversation.
Yeah. So, Berto, let's take a break. When we get back, let's talk about some of the details of this movie. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Hey, deserving listeners, as y'all know, I am constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. Well, one of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp. If you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to betterhelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the promo code Kirk because you get 10% off your first month, and it really helps us out. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, which is great because you deserve it. And I know also that it can be hard to find a good fit, find the right one for you. Well, one of the options available in terms of your shopping is to go to betterhelp.com/Kirk. I've been told you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message your counselor at any time. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. I've also been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy, and you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide. So go to betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month today.
All right, we're back from the break. I thought we'd do an OPP, an old patron praise. So these people became patrons in October of 2019 and stayed patrons loyally this entire time. We got Shayla from God knows where, Edith from Saratoga, California.
Oh.
Saratoga, California. Isn't there a Saratoga, Florida? Sarah from Austin, Texas. Jarl from...
Oh, I like Austin.
Jarl from Arvada, California. Danielle from Calgary, Canada, which I've been to before. Kian from Oakland, California. Erica from Ferndale, Michigan. Sam from Huntersville, North Carolina. Joe from God knows where. Maria from Los Altos, California.
Lots of Kelly.
And Grant, thank you so much for being a patron since October 2019 and staying a patron all of this time. So, rating, Berto, what'd you give it?
So as a movie, like the movie making, all this stuff, I think I gave it. Did I say an 8? I think I gave it an 8.
Yeah.
But message wise, I gave it like a 10, and feeling wise, I gave it a negative 100.
Yeah. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It would have been an 8 or a 9 if there weren't like the dozen or so silly moments that really felt like the movie Idiocracy at times. But given how much I like the rest of it, particularly the first ending, 7, solid 7. So, and let me just talk about the last ending, just to get it off my chest. So
the Bronto Croc.
Yeah. So
it's called.
The president and the Elon Musk character realize that the Earth is doomed, and they take this spaceship to another planet, and they cryogenically freeze themselves in the interim. So this is so incredibly stupidly discussed because everything. So I'm always a fan of storylines where I feel like it's grounded in reality. Where it's like it could happen, or at least it follows the general premise of the logic that the story has laid out in the beginning. In Game of Thrones, when the dragon dies and gets brought back to life, that made sense to me. It's like, sure. Even though it was shocking and really a big moment and kind of unexpected, and you're like, wait, a zombie dragon?
Dragons.
But it made sense given the premise that they had set up right from the beginning. From the very first episode, there was a baby that they changed into one of the walkers, and so it all makes sense. But there are other things in Game of Thrones where you're like, wait, what? That doesn't scan, right? Although I loved the scene where Arya takes out all of the twin,
right.
What's their phrase? Walder Frey.
Yeah.
so Arya dresses up as a servant and kills all of Walder Frey's sons, of which there are several, makes them into a meat pie and serves it to Walder Frey, and he eats his own sons, and then Arya kills him. Then Arya dresses up as Walder Frey and proceeds to kill all the Bannermen and all the other family members in one big poisoning. And in the moment, I loved that scene, but when I think about it, I'm like, that's a lot of logistics, you know? Like, that would be hard to pull. I mean, she's short, right? You know, they never talk about how she could grow 2 feet to look like a tall man, you know? And so I'm like, could she have gotten Sir Maren Trent, because she dresses up as a sex worker and gets him in a room and then gouges out his eyes? Could that have happened?
Right.
Yeah, because that's logistically, although very hard, it's grounded in reality. Like, I don't want, now maybe George
But these
Martin,
aren't like normal disguises, let's be honest, right? These are
magically
Yeah.
but that's the other thing. Like, I want it to be, I don't want it to be in the magic realm. I want it to feel like it could happen, the further we get out. Like, Iron Man 1 is grounded kind of in reality. By the time we get to Iron Man 3 with the nanobots and stuff, or not Iron Man 3, but later MCU movies, I'm just like, okay, we've just completely jumped the shark at this point. Like, there's no grounding to actual technology, and I don't like that. Anyway, so when they do this scene, I was like, we go from the first ending, which I found to be one of the most moving 5-minute sequences I've ever seen in movie history, where it feels very real, like this could happen to us. It's a metaphor for what, and they're just trying to enjoy themselves. And you also see Leo's character sad and apologetic towards his wife. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, about what happened. And they're just trying to have a good time. They're just trying to have a conversation about wine and about food and about, just regular things. And then boom, they're all dead. And I was like, fade to black. I'm like, oh man, powerful. And then movie's still going, spaceship taking off. They land on this planet and it looks, like an Avatar ridiculous planet. One, they all get out of the spaceship naked, which is like, why are they naked? Doesn't make any sense.
Because they're in cryo.
But
can't carry clothes for 12,000 years.
You can't put on a robe or a shirt.
Clothes disintegrate, bro.
Yeah, whatever. So there's that, but whatever. Well, one, we don't have the technology to cryogenically freeze people, and that might not.
In this movie does. He had
that
robots
might not ever
that could
be
take down asteroids.
Well, but that's grounded in reality. You can have a robot probe that could conceivably land on a comet and put a nuclear device inside of it. The plan was pretty bad. Of course, they actually depicted that it's like, this isn't likely to work. But the plan was at least grounded in a slight possibility. The cryogenically thing, we can't do that. 2, we don't know where any Earth-like planets are. Because how are we supposed to believe that Bash and the Elon Musk guy both completely has no idea when it comes to the comet, but knows everything about space travel and how to find an Earth-like planet. And then when they land, it still doesn't follow its own logic, because a dinosaur comes around the corner and he's looking at a little device in his hand, like an iPhone, and he's like, oh, I think this is a Croco whatever.
Yeah, that was their prediction algorithm from his social network.
That's stupid.
Remember? Because the prediction algorithm had gotten so good that it could predict how everyone was going to die. And when the president was like, do you know how I'm going to die? It's like, well, it says here it's a crocoduck. I don't know what that is. And it's sure enough, the algorithm was that good to predict 12,000 years into the future. Dude, it's a freaking satire.
That's not an excuse for shitty writing, Berto.
It's funny. I found that funny.
You did.
Yeah.
I just lost like 2 points
funny.
of respect for you.
It was, obviously the thing is over the top. So as much as we were saying, like, this could totally happen. Well, it could and it couldn't.
Would it have been a better movie if it didn't have that last scene?
Well, I enjoyed the comedic satirical aspects of the movie. Like,
you don't think it would have been a better movie if it just fades to black as everyone dies?
a serious version of that movie certainly needed to absolutely only do that. You're absolutely right. But that's not what this movie was. This movie was an over-the-top satire. The only reason that it feels too close to home is because our life has become a little over-the-top satirical.
Okay.
But to be fair, like even in our over-the-top satirical reality, you know what? Like, there weren't actually that many riots on the streets when we had to lock down for a bit. People did. Most people have actually gotten vaccinated. It's like, so it's one of these things like, yes, this is very close to home. It's unfortunately too much. And with climate change, absolutely. And that one's even, it makes sense because humans are really, really bad at long-term strategic planning. So when it's a pandemic that's actually infecting my neighbor, I might care. But when it's some like thing in the sky that may get warmer and I can't tie it very closely to anything tangible, even though my house is on fire, and I get how humans become totally irrational. It's just, I liked the crocodile scene.
Yeah, I mean, given what you're saying, I could see that. If you're approaching the movie like, look, this is satire. It's like a Simpsons episode, essentially, right?
A little over the top, yes. But
yeah.
But
for me, I guess I was so attached to the reality of this that I wanted it to feel real, because it is real to me. This is how I live my life every day. I am Jennifer Lawrence in this movie and I'm not strange. I'm not unique. There are a lot of Jennifer Lawrences screaming into the camera, "We're all going to die." Do you not realize there are bad things happening? And you're doing nothing, and you're concerning yourselves with gossip on Twitter. What's wrong with you?
Yes.
And then eventually you just give up and you sign the NDA and you make out with Timothy Chalamet, because it's like, what's the point?
Oh my God!
Because no one's listening. No one's been listening for decades, and it's just getting worse. It's not just even like plateauing. It's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
So. And there's not a human, at least in America, who hasn't heard of climate change. They haven't been exposed. Everyone's been exposed to the data, and yet it just keeps chugging along. We just keep going off the cliff.
Yeah.
So this movie, the last scene, I'm just like, oh, come on, like this is a serious. I think I might have even been crying because the final scene with the death. That the dinner, that was a touching moment and powerful for me. And then I have this like, I don't know, like Family Guy moment at the end. I was like, ugh.
No, I can feel that. Let me ask you a question though, and a little tangent here. Why is it that, because in reality, if all of a sudden an asteroid was heading our way and scientists did confirm this and blah, blah, I imagine that there wouldn't actually be companies out there going like, well, sure, but that's bad for our bottom line. Like, I imagine that this would be fairly, like, universal. Like, we'd say, well, oh no, I mean, it is an asteroid. We do have to stop it, otherwise we will all, in fact, die. Now, I don't deny that there are some percentage of people that are going to claim that it's not real and that it is, but it's the apocalypse, whatever. I grant you that will still be in place. But what I'm struggling with is, like, why are so many companies, educated people that should know better, why are they still denying that there is a problem with our ecology and our climate and a apocalyptic doom coming, when it won't benefit their bottom line just in as soon as maybe a decade? Like, I don't understand that. It's so puzzling to me.
Because they can't see the comet yet. That's kind of the element of Don't Look Up. It's like,
so, but how is that possible?
It's such an abstract. It's not in front of you.
But these people should know better, right? Like, it's like the executives in the tobacco companies knew better. They just didn't care. The executives in ExxonMobil had the reports. They just wanted to make money for a few more decades.
Well, so that brings me to the other thing I want to say about this movie is that it wasn't, to me, about the idiocy of the people, although that very much was a part of it. To me, it was about the influence of capitalism on our politics. Because if you look at this story, they go into the president's like, and they blow him off, but then they actually get the Princeton and the Harvard scientists that say, yes, this thing is going to kill the planet. Then they're like, let's do something about it. Let's fire our rockets, and they actually had a plan to do something that is something
they
that
developed a vaccine.
Right. And so they're like, let's do it. But then at the last moment, the Elon Musk character comes in and says, but we can make money off of this. I have a solution. And they're like, ooh, wait, we could actually make money off of this? Okay, well, let's do the private sector version of this.
Yeah.
And that's the point of this movie. They all died because a rich guy with a tech disruptor bullshit dream and was paying, and they were sure to mention that this Mark Rylance character was the biggest contributor to the president's campaign and had her in his pocket. When he said jump, she jumped. And when he said, I have a plan that is better, and even though all the scientists say it can't work, it can work, she said, okay. And that's the point of this movie, and that's the point of our ecological disaster. It's not that people are stupid. It's not like corporate people are stupid. It's that when there's money on the line and someone's like, wait, so one direction I make more money and another direction I make less money, or I might even lose my company altogether, if I'm a coal producing plant or something, right? Well, I'm going to choose the direction that makes money. And I'm going to pay, and I'm going to make sure that I stay afloat by paying money to politicians so that they work with me on this. That's the point of this movie.
Well, that's one of the points of the movie, but I wouldn't let us off the hook just yet, because someone is buying all the products from these companies and someone is voting for these people. So, it's like, and in the movie, it's clear that all of us are still watching the shows and laughing along and, not looking up. And so, sure, absolutely. Like, the fact that money is given to politicians and politicians end up saying what they say because they care about that money, that's true. The fact that companies make decisions based on what will make them more money, that's true. But consumers also buy stuff that they want, and we also want our crypto, and we want to get rich quick with our crypto, and we're all there. We're all in there. It takes all of us together to make all those billions for the people that have them to spend on the politicians, and all of us to vote for those politicians.
Well, and all of us to ignore the truth and to not vote people in who are emphasizing these kinds of things.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Berto, are you starting to become like me, a demoralized climate change advocate?
Not demoralized, just... I mean, I've never disagreed with you that it's looking kind of hectic. It's just, what are we going to do? Are we going to go out, demoralized, or are we just going to go out with a bang? And I want to go out with a bang.
You're Leo, and I'm Jennifer Lawrence. I'm already making out with Timothy Chalamet, and you're still having an affair with what's her face, like hoping that things will turn. You're on the committee with the president.
She might get me into a cool party. She might get me in all the cool parties, man.
So did you know that this movie, Don't Look Up, broke the record for the most hours viewed in a single week on Netflix?
Oh, I did not know that.
Which is saying something, right?
Yeah. Because wasn't previously Squid Game breaking all sorts of records?
Not in a single week, because I think it was spread out over time. The biggest movies, do you know the previous biggest movies before this on Netflix?
On Netflix?
Yeah. One of them was kind of famous at the beginning of the pandemic as a very watched movie on Netflix. Now, of course, we could never know if it's accurate because Netflix doesn't publish their data. But I don't know. I think it's probably credible that it's
what
true.
Was it?
Bird Box.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was all the rage back then.
And another movie that came out, like I think a year ago, called Red Notice. Did you ever see that, Red Notice?
No, I never did. Red Notice.
With Ryan Reynolds and others. And I'm like, I'd never even heard of it before.
That sounds fun.
But like, so based on the views, it's about, I think it's 100 million views in 1 week, which, maybe if there's at least 2 people or average 2 people watching every view, That's 200 million people watched this movie in a single week. I mean, imagine if that happened with a regular movie in the theaters,
Yeah.
That'd be like, with tickets being $20, it's like 2 billion in 1 week. You know what I mean? It'd be totally.
I wonder how many people watched Clear and Present or not, what was it called? An Inconvenient Truth when it came out. Obviously, it wasn't those
not that
numbers,
many.
But, no, I know, but it was a blockbuster.
Yeah.
Which does. Sorry, it does show you. Well, I guess it puts into question like what's the effect that these things have or don't have. But Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right. So the effect. So the hope is that it'll change people's mind. I don't think it will. I think that's kind of the point of the movie.
200 million people. Did anyone take action afterwards? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't have any faith that enough.
Rotten Tomatoes was let's see. Critics gave it a what can you remind me 90. Critics gave it a 75.
54.
Oh. Okay.
Which is which means the green, whatever the opposite of certified fresh is.
Viewers gave it an 80.
Yeah, 78.
Okay.
Why the difference? That's a huge difference.
Well, I do think two things. I was reading some of the critics. I don't know where I was reading this, but some of the critics just kind of missed the point. I feel. And honestly, and it kind of a little bit of the way you were feeling, which was like there are some very silly things in the movie. Also, some critics were like, upset about the amount of politics in the movie. It's like, okay,
right.
Well. But as far as a movie goes, like if you're just rating, I'm sure that there's a lot of things you could poke holes at it. But it's kind of weird for a movie this effective, this moving, this popular, this entertaining to get a 50-some%. That's really low.
I know. Just to read some bad reviews from top critics. Armin White says, "This film negatively indicts McKay and insults his audience." So that was a frequent theme. It's like it's insulting to the audience. I think that gets at what you're saying is that they think that the silliness was over the top, I guess. David,
it insults the audience? Like, well, humans wouldn't be this stupid.
Right, that kind of thing. And
really?
Right. And I there was that theme too. I'm just like, have you been paying attention? Like,
well, the proof
25% of Americans think the coronavirus was man-made. Do you know how stupid that is? Like, I would understand like if you had questions, like you just didn't know, like you're like, I don't know, I haven't really looked into it, because if you don't live in scientific circles, you wouldn't have access to those analyses that have happened. But to believe it, to say yes, I put my dollar down on choice A, it's man-made. Like, yeah. So insulting that audience, like, no, it's not insulting. It's reflecting.
Reflecting is a great word. Well, and it's very reflective that the critics would have that criticism, because in the universe of the movie, I could absolutely see critics making a comment about how insulting to the audience both those characters were. Both scientists. They were very insulting to the audience.
David Fear says, "Don't Look Up is a blunt instrument in lieu of a sharp razor. And while McKay may believe that we're long past subtlety, it doesn't mean that one man's wake-up sheeple howl into the abyss is funny or insightful or even watchable." So kind of a similar. Wall Street Journal says, "This might have been great fun if it had been executed with some respect for our intelligence and for the power of sharp-shooting satire rather than glib nihilism."
What? Oh god.
Yeah.
This is dumb. Like, satire is satire, and if this had been a movie, so like it's like I feel like they want both. They wanted this movie to be a serious movie with like a fine razor's edge about the subtleties of global warming and stuff. Like, well, that's not what this movie is. This is an over-the-top satire.
Right. He's trying to make something entertaining.
Did you watch Mars Attacks? Mars Attacks, you could have had this, like, oh, this is insulting to the audience. A Martian attack wouldn't be like this at all. Martians wouldn't have those goofy heads. And, like, get me a break.
An article in a conservative site says, the film's ultimate message about listening to the science comes off as entirely tone-deaf after nearly 2 years of people wearing masks outside, masking children, and cheerfully participating in hygiene theater for the sake of appeasing experts and political special interests.
That is so perfect. See, that lives in the universe of the movie.
That's what I'm saying. This is what they are, I mean, yes.
My God.
I need say nothing beyond just reading that person's article.
If there's been one thing we have exemplified over the last 2 years is listening to the science. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is why I was just watching a clip today from Joe Rogan where he had a guest on that actually had data about how myocarditis is about, anywhere from 5 to, depending on which data set you're looking, 5 to 8 times more prevalent if you catch coronavirus than if you got certain vaccines. Anyways, and all this time, Joe Rogan's been believing that this is not the case. And then he's seeing the data and he's like, well, no, but I'm talking about like younger people. It's like, yeah, okay, let's look at younger people. Oh yeah, it's confirmed. No, but like, I mean, like for kids, it's like, okay, so let's look at, okay, here's data from 15-year-olds to whatever. It's like, oh, okay. And even when the data is like finally like super crisp, Joe Rogan goes, well, yeah, but like, wait, what is even this? Like, where's this data coming from? Like, can we even trust this data? So, and I'm not picking on Joe Rogan. It's just that he happens to be the biggest podcast in the world and people listen to him. So this is what we've been dealing with. So to say like, what? Everyone's been listening to the science for the last 2 years. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the thing is I don't mind questioning studies. I do it all the time. I'll read a study or I'll talk about a study on the podcast and I'll be like, let's look at the methodology. Let's think about the bias. Has it been peer reviewed? That's all fine. But when you're operating from an ideological position and everything that contradicts that ideology gets questioned and everything that doesn't question the ideology does not get questioned, then you have a problem, right? So even along the lines of what this article was writing about, like they're pointing out to, nearly 2 years of people wearing masks outside. Yeah, were there possibilities, especially as things were developing over the past couple of years, where we were a little overzealous about wearing masks outside in situations where the chance of being infected or transmitting the virus would be extremely low? Yeah, it's possible. But we didn't know yet. And it's like, well, why not? It's so easy to wear a mask. It's not like you have to, cut off a finger. It's like, just wear a mask. Like, let's just do everything we can so that we can. So in other kinds of things that they say here, masking children, I don't understand that one. Cheerfully participating in hygiene theater. Yeah. Is there some hygiene theater involving around the coronavirus? Sure. Meaning that we do it not only because we're trying to put on a theater of like, we're doing everything safe. Sure. Or the powers that be are trying to make us feel like we're safe. Maybe. But that doesn't mean it's all ridiculous, right? It doesn't mean that scientists are idiots. It doesn't mean that experts are dumb. It doesn't mean we throw out the whole thing. It doesn't mean don't look up.
Exactly. Oh my God. Here's the thing. Oh my gosh. Kirk, guess what I just read? So you know how we finally passed climate change reform across the world and yay. It turns out we've been overdoing it for the last decade. The forests are starting to creep back into the cities. We're going to have to cut some trees down. We've been overdoing it, dude.
Yeah.
But, granted, the carbon emissions are way down and we've managed to reverse some of the irreversible damage. But dude, the forests are over. Like, yes.
Yeah. Think about the root damage, Berto.
Yes.
Think about the root damage.
Yeah, so, yes, we masked a little bit more than we needed to. Maybe, because now with Omicron, apparently you can't mask enough. Like, it doesn't matter.
But Berto, how are you supposed to own the libs if you're wearing your mask?
Oh, my gosh.
We've been talking about Adam McKay. I didn't realize this. He wrote, directed, and produced this movie.
Wow. It's a lot of hats.
If you don't know who Adam McKay is, some of his biggest movies are some of my favorites. Anchorman, Will Ferrell, Talladega Nights.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Anchorman, yeah. Well, so his start was with Will Ferrell did a lot. He used to write on SNL actually.
Oh, wow.
And would work as a team with Will Ferrell. And
Wow.
yeah, Anchorman, Talladega Nights, The Big Short, and Vice, which is a movie about Dick Cheney. So this is considered like his trilogy of political movies: Big Short,
I
Vice.
see. Oh, did he do Big Short?
Yeah, I just said
That's in this style too. Nowhere near as outrageous, but it does have the hyperbolic moments. Some of which actually in that movie I didn't feel worked. Like when they have the bathtub scene with what's her name. And, there were a few moments like that that actually took me out of the movie. But maybe it's because in that case that actually all happened, and a lot of people, including myself, lost a shit ton of money. So I was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm less in the mood. Whereas when it comes to the end of the world and us destroying ourselves, I'm really in the mood for a comedy.
So when I would watch interviews or read articles about this movie, half the time the tagline for this movie wasn't, which is, okay, and this is just another satire that this movie exemplifies. Like I was watching an interview with, I think, Leonardo DiCaprio or something about the movie, and the first thing they ask is some kind of thing like, "Oh my goodness, the Oscar star power of the cast is just amazing. Can you how did they get so many different massive stars on the silver screen?" Like, that's right out of this movie, right?
Yeah, it is. It
like
totally
it's a
is.
movie about a disaster, and it's analogous to a disaster that's currently
Real
happening.
life, yeah.
And you're focusing on the star power, and I always find that to be kind of weird. It's like, yeah, there are a lot of stars. Who cares? Like, is the movie any good? Like, you could have a movie with a bunch of stars, and it could be terrible. You realize that
There's many of those actually.
yeah. So, but along those lines, we have Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Jonah Hill, Mark Rylance, Tyler Perry, Ron Perlman, Ariana Grande, who I thought was really funny.
Oh, we had a huge debate in my household during the movie about Ariana Grande because someone said that she had improvised her lines, and my brother, I'm going to throw my brother under the bus, he flipped out. He was like, what? Like, so what? Like, is that supposed to be impressive? Like, why was she so unprofessional? Like, she should have showed up to set knowing her line. And it's like all these random assumptions.
Well, Adam McKay, the way he typically does his sort of creative style is he'll have a script and he'll shoot it, and then he'll spend, 15 minutes just saying, okay, let's play around with it. Because he's used to playing with Will Ferrell and what's his face?
Yeah. Jonah Hill or something.
No, the other.
Because Jonah Hill improvised a lot of his lines, apparently.
Dr. Steve Brule. What's his name? Anyway, he's used to working with people that can improvise better than any script you could ever write.
Well,
so
in either case, apparently that's not at all what happened. It's just that while she was singing her song, she ad-libbed one line, and they decided to keep that in the...
that's funny. Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep, and Timothée Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet is having a moment, my friend.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize him. So we're sitting there watching it.
You didn't recognize him?
I didn't recognize... Well, they made him pretty unrecognizable, if you ask me.
He looks exactly like his old self.
He looked like a skater boy.
They put a hat on his head. That's all they did.
I didn't recognize him. And we're sitting there, and my brother's like, yes. He's like going crazy on... See, I'm throwing my brother so under the bus. He's like, yes. And I'm like, what are you so excited about? He's like, I just love seeing this guy. I'm like, what? Who is this guy? What are you talking about? Dune. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, did you see Call Me By Your Name?
No.
You see Beautiful Boy?
No.
You see The King?
No.
You saw Little Women?
No.
Oh, well, no wonder you don't recognize. You don't know this guy. You don't even know who he is.
I don't know. I just know him from Dune, but I didn't even know him from Dune.
Well, and you haven't seen the French Dispatch yet.
No.
So you've seen one movie with this guy and you didn't recognize him. Yeah, okay. I mean that scans. But yeah, I mean he's.
But apparently he is having his moment.
Yeah, this year, French Dispatch, Dune, and Don't Look Up. From 2001. Those are probably all going to be Oscar movies, by the way.
What range? Like the son of like a space traveling guildmaster and then a skater boy.
Well, if you really want to see his range, watch Call Me by Your Name. I mean, this movie, I loved this movie. I thought it was amazing. And that was the first time I'd see. Well, actually, the first time we'd see him is in Interstellar. He was he was a young
Really?
Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. He was a young Casey Affleck in Interstellar, but he wasn't a big star by that point.
I see.
Okay. So I wanted to talk. I'm looking at my notes here. It was also kind of accurate because with Timothée Chalamet, he was exhibiting the perspective that, well, God has a plan, so
Yeah.
I'm just going to let go and let God.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that when I was growing up in my church, that idea was ridiculous to people in my church. They would say, well, God gave you will. God specifically gave you a choice. So it's God's plan that you invoke your choice. So if you choose to do nothing, then that's your choice and you reap the consequences. And the other thing that was a prevalent philosophy in my church was your body is part of God's creation and the world is a part of God's creation. And
you got to take care of it.
If you shit all over it, you're shitting on God.
Yeah, you got to be good stewards.
Yeah. And so God has a plan. I
don't know what happened to that because I grew up with the same ideology, even though in a completely different country and everything. Same ideology though. Like, hey, you have free will. That's a big part of the philosophy. Because if you don't have free will, then why would you get punished for eternity, right? That's a big part of the thing. It's like you have to have free will. And two, you're supposed to take care of stuff. Like you were given stewardship. So when we're like, yeah, no, it's cool though. I'm going to deforest the Amazon. What?
Yeah. Well, because God would not let me do it if it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought that they got right in the movie was just how bad scientists are at communicating with the public. And this is something that I've been talking about since the beginning of the podcast, even before the podcast, which is one of the reasons, and there were, a handful of reasons why I started this podcast, was because I was looking in the internet in 2007 and 2008. And although it was nothing like it is today, it was, similar in that there was a lot of misinformation, not nearly as much as today, but there was. And I was looking around for people in my field, professors in my field, who were online talking about the reality, talking about science-based information, talking about what therapy is really like. And I couldn't find much, if anything, really. And I started this podcast saying, well, I could sit around and complain about the fact that misinformation is happening, or I could do something about it. And that was, one of the 5 reasons why I started this podcast. So it's a well-known fact. And it's so one, you can just be like, oh, you're, scientists are bad. On the other hand, I consider it an irresponsibility of the field of various different disciplines. If you, as a climate scientist or a psychologist or a medical professional or a vaccine expert or a MNRA person or a epidemiologist or something, and you just sit in your ivory tower and publish your findings in peer-reviewed journals and which are only read sometimes by other people in your field and often not, then you are irresponsible with your information. Now, if you're doing research on Beanie Babies, whatever, but if you're doing research on things that impact the public, the whole reason why we had those journals to begin with, the whole, the culture. So let me just go on a rant here for a second, bro. So back in the day, we had this emerging thing called science and peer review and publishing your results. And this culture emerged that said, well, one, you have to publish it in these like central places. You can't just it's harder. How do you find things? You have to have things that are findable. This is before the internet, right? So you have to put them in and you have to catalog them somehow. And you got to put them in these publications, right? And the other thing is you have to have people start looking at it, peer review. You can't just publish any old thing, especially on, respectable journals. So there has to be a culture. And then it starts to get involved in academia, and academia starts, okay, that's a good system. In fact, what we should do is we should require, because research is a pain in the ass and publication is a huge pain in the ass. So in order to uphold that scientific ethic and the integrity of our field, we should actually make it a part of the requirement of your position as a professor to publish. Not because, because universities get paid nothing when someone publishes. They don't get any monetary gain. They do get a slight amount of prestige, but it's probably more of a factor of this is the culture that we created. It's just like the right thing to do, We should have this self-imposed rule. And so because otherwise we don't do research, we don't do science, we don't have the time for it. We don't put it in the journals where other scientists can read it, and possibly journalists, possibly the outside public. Well, then, this thing called the internet came around. And that should have been a game changer at that point. All the academics should have said, no, we're focusing on journals, fine. That's a good cultural system, but half of our attention should be on the internet.
Yeah,
because
it should be published, easily searchable.
Yeah, and in a way that they can read, because the other thing is science journalism has been decreasing in, sophistication, since newspapers started losing their science journalists, they get paid specifically to do this kind of thing. And so from the beginning, scientists should have been, okay, this new thing called the internet comes around. We should be learning how to do this, because why would I be doing research on climate science if not to communicate in a way that will change policy? And the only way you can do that, especially with the internet reality, is to communicate to the public and influence the voters who vote for the blah, 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 And they never did that. And there were many calls for it. There were many indications to do that. And they just stuck their head in the sand and kept publishing in these journals, which is good, but half of their energy should have been in communication that actually changes things. The internet, podcasting, journalistic writing, communicating to politicians, advocating, marching, creating hubbub, but you stick your head in the sand, and there's no education in this. It's not like the Jennifer Lawrence character, as she's getting her PhD in astrophysics, takes a class on, how to communicate when you happen to be on Cate Blanchett and Tyler Perry's show. She flipped out like a normal human being and lost her credibility as a communicator on TV. And then, the Leo character is stammering, doesn't really know how to put things together in a way that is digestible to the public. And this movie really typified that well to me.
So when I was a kid, I remember watching all these. There was a series, a show, or many different shows or something, but on TV in Colombia, and they were all, shows from here that were scientific. They would show. Remember one time it was about like some boat in the Arctic Ocean, and it was doing some research on some corals or something. But they would actually like show the science. They would show like the scientists would be talking about how they're trying to what is their hypothesis, how they're trying to ascertain what's going on. I remember watching a lot of shows like that, and first of all, the only ones I see these days that are like that are like the animal shows, like they're watching the ice, the polar bears and things like that. But what I haven't seen, and maybe I just don't know where to look, is documentary after documentary after documentary actually going through the science, talking to the scientists, showing us what do we know and how do we know it and why.
Well, Mythbusters
and that would be
was
useful.
An example of it wasn't hard science, but Mythbusters was absolutely an example and fun and entertaining regarding the scientific method.
No, absolutely. But, it wasn't focused on like global warming, right? So I want to see, and the I keep saying clear and present danger. The Inconvenient Truth was, of course, trying to do that, but it was very high level. I actually want to see very dry, like long ass documentaries with lots of rich information, talking to all the scientists, showing me the information. Because I feel like not everyone's going to watch this, but we need to be armed with this information.
Yeah. There is one, and I agree, there is one YouTube channel, I can't remember his name, but he's a climate scientist, and he's young, and he's funny, and I wish I remembered his name, but he does a lot of funny, interesting videos. He's a climate PhD student. Anyway, I wish I could remember his name. So other things I liked about this movie, Berto, is that a lot of the science was correct. You know, the comet looked accurate, it had 2 tails, nuclear warheads launched, possible solution. You have 6 months. It's, you know, pretty typical. It's pretty typical. The way that it was discovered, from what I understand from the experts, is, you know, it's a pretty common scenario where you're scanning the sky for something else, and you're like, whoa, there's a comet. You know, I wasn't looking for that, but I think I just discovered a comet. You know, and that happens sometimes, and a lot, it just goes under the radar because, you know, it's not going to hit Earth, and there's a lot of objects that are flying out there, comets and asteroids.
So if the comets and asteroids fly under the radar, that's when you can detect them?
Yeah. And what else was accurate? I don't know, just a lot of the science.
Shooting your AR-15 at the comet, is that accurate?
That's accurate. Yeah, that's what humans would do. And the bullets come down and kill other human beings. Kill yourself, by the way. I loved Jennifer Lawrence and Leo's acting. I thought it was,
totally.
Especially Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, there were scenes where I was just like, wow, she's going to a place, you know. Leo too. There were times when, and I know because I've seen interviews, they agree with the sentiments of these characters, and so if you know anything about what's happening to the planet, it's not hard to go there where they go. You know.
Nope.
The demoralization, the anger, the frustration, the meltdowns that you'll have, you know. I also loved their chemistry. And I thought, you know, we've talked about Leo a lot, but I thought Leo's character was so, I don't know how to say it, but just so great, because it was such a different character for anyone, let alone Leonardo DiCaprio, because he was essentially this like just totally normal, nervous, but not over the top nervous dad. You know, he's just a dad.
That's right.
And he dresses in dad clothes, and you could tell he has like he hasn't really thought about his haircut in a while. But
I love that they didn't ignore the fact that in practice he is good looking, because they could have played it like, what was this nerdy scientist, you know? But instead they're like, whoa, he's hot.
Yeah, and I thought that was the other thing I liked about this movie was the humor, you know, like AILF, astronomer I'd like to F, you know. I mean, there were a number of moments where I laughed out loud. I watched this a second time in prep for this episode and laughed again at several lines. It's pretty good.
And what's her name? The president. She was great.
Meryl Streep, yeah.
Meryl Streep was so good.
Yeah.
I mean, she's good and stuff, but like this is just so. Oh, and I'm sorry, Jonah Hill. How could I forget? Like, what a great send up of the reality that we've been dealing with.
Yeah. So he's great, and he played it well, but almost everything he did in the movie I didn't like, because it was going in that direction of too broad for me.
Okay.
Like, honestly, if you got rid of his character or just wrote him differently, because it was, I could see Adam McKay. I'm pretty sure what he did was he's like, okay, all of my comedic notes, most of my comedic beats are going to be through him. You know, the moment when Leo and Cate Blanchett are making out in the White House, and Jennifer Lawrence is like, and then you're like, whoa, and then of course Jonah Hill tries to make out with Jennifer Lawrence, you know, and just like these little moments like that, we're like, okay, like.
So you probably haven't actually seen the Trump kids talking in public.
I mean, not as much as you have probably, but even if it was accurate, it just felt like, I don't know, it just wasn't for me. Okay. I loved the fact that Leo and J-La looked like regular people. I mean, they were still obviously attractive human beings, but they purposely and I think effectively made them look like regular human beings. Like, one of the things that really is a pet peeve of mine is like, they're like cast like, okay, we need like just a regular human being, and this actor and their hair and their makeup, they're they're supermodels, right out of the
Right.
gate. And I'm like, that's not a regular, like one of the things that I like is when they shoot in public and that there's no extras. It's just like regular people walking the street,
Mm-hmm.
And I can always tell, oh, those are real people. How come I can tell the difference between an extra and an extra who's supposed to look like a real person and a real person? How come I can tell that? Well, because real people are not presentable on camera. Real people have hair that doesn't look right, or they have bad choices about, piercings or something. And Jennifer Lawrence and Leo, I thought, they just had that. And I thought it was great what they did with Jennifer Lawrence. They just really, anyway, you could just tell a lot by the way that her costume looked, essentially.
Yeah.
I also liked how they I liked the fact that Adam McKay made the scientists the heroes of this story. Right. Leo and Jennifer Lawrence are the heroes. They're the they're the Aragorn of the movie. And when movies almost always make scientists into the villains.
Yeah.
Can you think of scientific villains, Berto, off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, well, usually, even if the scientist themselves is not the main villain has scientists that are villainous in their employ.
Yeah.
But certainly, like, you could almost look at all Bond movies, have either a scientist bad guy or scientists very involved in the bad guy's plotting.
Yeah. You got Dr. No and you got Dr. Evil. So it's, Bond and a Bond like Dr. Strangelove, Dr. Henry Wu of the Jurassic World, Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Octopus. And those are just the doctors. So, you know, it's very frequent, and we wonder why we have an anti-science society. Well, it's because it's a part of our culture to hate scientists. It's part of our culture to be skeptical of people who study. I don't understand. It's just like this anti-intellectual American thing that just boggles the mind. Shouldn't you I thought we were supposed to respect smart people who know things, who've done the science. Like when did that change? Do you feel like that's changed in the past 20 years? Like
it has, and it's been sadly purposeful, because essentially the narrative has become in many of these circles, the narrative has become, look, the more education you have, the less I trust you. If you're a university professor, that's like really untrustworthy, because you're like high and mighty, you're looking down on me, you're in your ivory tower. And scientists don't have all the answers,
But I wonder if that a good portion of it has to do with politicians trying to get power by denying science. It begins
absolutely.
with
that and the
cigarettes and oil and all those kinds of things.
Absolutely. There is also a cultural thing too, which is that it's because
you're better than me?
Yeah, it's not just scientists. There is a thing about like elitists, the university elitists, the Hollywood elitists, the elitists. We have to be against elitists because we are not elitists. And so
it's just so stupid. Like you hire someone to do gardening in your in your yard, and they do it for a living, 40 hours a week, and they have some thing to tell you about how to keep care of a lawn. You're just like, are you talking down to me?
Yeah. Oh, you gardeners with all your lawn tips,
with all your expertise and your knowledge,
and this, rosemary, that.
I can't believe that you would tell me things based on data. Like, what's wrong with it?
Spit on your lawn. Oh,
I thought about
that's
you.
Good. The spit will fertilize the lawn. Oh, then I don't spit.
I thought about you when Leo's character is on the internet, and he said, because people were commenting on something, and he was arguing with someone on the internet, and he's like typing, and he's like, well, so actually science, because someone was anti-science with him, he's like, well, actually science developed the computer or the phone onto which you are actually commenting with me right now, so I wouldn't be so anti-science, because you often will say stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will sit there on our phones using Wi-Fi through the internet, talking about how we can't trust the science.
Yeah. Using microchips that are, made of compounds that are, drawn from the earth and have
Like,
been,
we haven't
the fact that we
earned-
even know that silicon isn't just like a rock, it's
Yeah.
like, it's all science. Like
Yeah.
every tiny quote unquote bit involved in that whole scenario, scientists with their scientific method and data gathering and peer review developed all of that. So,
And I think that's where it gets easy to turn that against itself, because you say, see, they're just looking down on us. They're talking down on us. So yeah, sure, I don't understand how all that works, but I understand what I understand. And the nice thing about a phone is you don't have to look at the silicon or how it is built or how it works. It's just a nice little package. But as soon as you have to look at a chart that shows a trend, or you have to understand that, yes, this can happen, but it can happen a lot more over here, and these statistics, like, your eyes glaze over and you're done with the conversation. But I don't have to think of any of that to pay some money for a phone built by some kids in some foreign country.
also, how are you going to own the libs if you agree with their science?
You can't own the libs.
The other thing I didn't like about the movie was that except at the very end, did they acknowledge that other societies exist besides American society. The whole time I'm like, you realize that India and China and Japan, I think, they all have space programs, and nukes. So,
but that was kind of, I thought, well, you're right. No, it's truly
very a white American centric.
You are definitely right. I'm not going to deny that. At the same time, you would think like that all these other countries in practice are actually actively trying to do something, and we're the only ones not doing something about climate change. But that's not exactly.
Yeah, but there was
either.
no acknowledgement, because like it wasn't even like, well, the Russians they're having troubles too. Like there wasn't even a comment, and because I'm like. And I found
the only one
be,
they did was when they said, yeah, okay, they all got together and they tried their own thing, and sadly it failed.
Yeah. And the first time I watched it, I was like, I just took it for what it was. The second time I watched it, I think it was slightly implied that maybe Bash and the American government sabotaged
it. That's what I got to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was really suspicious. Like they blew up.
Yeah.
They blew up?
Yeah.
How they just blew up.
Yeah.
They just was weird.
But it would have absolutely taken away from the story, Leah, as it's crescendoing, and the don't look up, and another accurate thing about this movie that was really sad and demoralizing and a sad reflection of our society is that Leo and Jennifer Lawrence were campaigning for science. They had to go to rallies and figure out how to use Twitter well. Like they had to use political and, World Wrestling Federation techniques to get people to pay attention to them, when they should just say, we have all of the scientists who know the stuff have looked at the science, and we're all going to die unless someone does something that is scientifically possible. And so anyway, but
I just thought of two different endings for the movie that would have been awesome. Do you want the really depressing one first, or the really funny one?
Depressing.
Okay, so the depressing one is when the Russians and the Indians and everyone else are trying to launch their thing, and we see those explosions. It is in fact us bombing them, which triggers Russia to essentially fight back, and then we start a nuclear war and we destroy ourselves. So before the asteroid hits us, the planet's already destroyed.
And then the asteroid misses us because the scientists.
Yeah, and the asteroid misses us.
Or no, the nuclear explosions push the Earth slightly off course, and then.
Well, that was going to be my funny one, was something like that, where as the nukes are going, they actually crash into the asteroid on accident, and it solves the problem.
Yeah. All right, Berto, final word on Don't Look Up and the state of our planet.
Well, so first, a little thing for me is that I'm going to take two steps. I know it's probably meaningless, whatever, but it's not for me. I recently, this year, bought a car that still consumes gas. And I didn't want to, but there was massive shortages of everything, and I needed a car because my lease was up on the other thing, and the pandemic was waning. But anyways, I feel terribly guilty about it. I don't want it. So I'm going to replace it, even though I'm going to lose money in the process, but I'm going to replace it. That's the first thing. But then at a more macro level, I don't know, man. I feel like if I'm going to actually use my voice for anything on YouTube, I feel like I need to talk about this stuff. And I'm not a scientist, but I don't know, what if I did try to like get scientists? Maybe I'll start with local scientists. Like, hey, go to UW and be like, hey, what do you study? Do you study? And then just interview them and be like, this is interesting, and put some content out, because I don't know. Like I said, I want to go out kicking and screaming and biting and chomping rather than like, well, there goes that. That's my final thought.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, at least you'd be kicking and screaming.
Well, and plus, you got to practice kicking and screaming against the crocobrontos, because those things look pretty scary to me.
And that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because
you deserve it.